And my last question really is, what's one thing you believe in that people whom you work with really don't believe the same perspective that you have, and you find it hard to drill it into them?
I spent 3 days last week at the Indian School of Business, and I was part of this. I was fortunate enough to be invited to this exercise where there were marketers, senior marketers from a wide variety of categories. They were from FMCG, they were from hospitality, travel, uh, industrial products like glue. So it was a very, very diverse audience. We spent one day understanding the difference between data and insight. As someone who has come from a consumer research background, I spent 5 years in consumer research, so I felt okay, fine, maybe I had a little bit better understanding. But what I found and what I was surprised by, and maybe I should not have been surprised by it, but I think even marketers today, senior marketers, tend to confuse data with insight. I think marketing at the end of the day has always been about understanding people, what they want, what they fear, what moves them to act, right? Today's brands, they are drowning in data, okay, but they're completely starved for insight, right? Most companies today have access to customer analytics, behavioral tracking, predictive modeling, but all that data alone is not insight. Data tells you what people do, insight tells you why they're doing it. Data without the interpretation is just noise, right? So I think that is something where I would say a lot of, at least newer marketers need to kind of, because data is a lot more easily accessible right now. People tend to look at the data and then say, this is what the data is the truth, right? Data is only part of the picture. Okay, and for you to get into a more insightful frame of mind, insights don't just emerge. You actually need rituals to cultivate them. I think I was speaking to I met this marketer at a forum, and he said something to me which I thought was very, very interesting. He said, "Insight is a mood. You have to be comfortable with the idea of questioning whatever is coming across your desk or your plate or your dashboard. Don't just look at the what, try to get behind it and understand the why. And it's not the role of one individual. Every person who's working in that business should try to get a better understanding of why. Okay, you may not all be able to go to to the same level of depth, but it helps. I'll give you one very small example of how this worked. We had a landing page for an investment product, okay, that we had recently launched. And when we looked at all of the heat maps and the click tracking data, we had first of all, the first thing we did was, when we were creating this landing page, we benchmarked it against competition. We said, okay, fine, what is competition doing well? These are the things that are doing well. Our own experience and data has told us these are the things that customers tend to look for. Let's marry these two things together, come out with this version of this page, this landing page, because it's going to help us convert. We put that page out there. And then when we start looking at the data, we said, yeah, okay, fine. The performance of this page, the conversion is in line with the expected trends. Now, how can we kind of optimize this? Right? So we said, okay, fine. Let's look at the heat maps and the click tracking data and say, where are people not spending any time? What are the parts they're just skimming over or just avoiding? Right? So we looked at all of the data and we said, okay, fine, there are a whole bunch of things that they don't spend time on. Why? Because maybe they think the product is too complex. Maybe that's a second stage or a third stage sort of query. They don't need it in stage one. Maybe I just need them to move further down the funnel. Said, let's take that out. Okay, let's redesign the page, but let's take out all what we think is extraneous information. When we did that, we were expecting to see better throughput. That didn't happen. In certain cases, it actually went down. But it was counterintuitive for us. So we said, okay, fine, we need to figure out what this is. We can go back to, the same older version of the page, but then there's no insight there, right? So we said, let's start listening to all of the calls that are coming in. So just imagine, the people who are dropping out, we had no way to contact them. Right? They had not even left a phone number. So we said, let's start listening to all of the calls of the people who actually have moved down further down the chain and just understand what are the questions that they're asking. So if there were 100 questions that typically come in, we just stack ranked and said these are the top 5 most repeated, like an FAQs, but actually asked by the customer speaking to an agent. And we said, what if I just take those 5 questions and if I put them and if I package them nicely and I make them, in a format that's more relatable, that sounds like an individual is talking to you. If I just take those 5 questions out of, like, say, maybe 100 calls and I put that back on the page, what happens? When we did that, all of a sudden we saw that our conversions began to really improve within a very short period of time. I mean, we are talking about, like, a couple of 2 to 3 weeks, right? And to me, really, that is just illustrative of what tends to happen. Data can give you part of the picture, cannot fill in everything. It can lead you to different hypotheses, okay, some of which might work, but if they work, you don't even know why they're working. You're making an assumption, right? So it's always important to kind of go back and question and understand the why. So I would say to most marketers out there, we are all of us today very fortunate that we live in a world where data is so easily available. But that doesn't mean that we need to be disconnected from actually the insight. And inciting is a mood, right? It's a habit. It's a daily ritual, right? And it's something you need to inculcate in every member of your team, right? And other teams as well. It's not like, okay, fine, only marketers have access to data and should look at it. Finance guys have access to data. Product teams have access to data. Customer experience guys, customer service, everyone has access. It's at our fingertips. We should just try to take advantage by asking the why behind it.